to my next video in my Ryu the Argonian walkthrough series. This topic was actually a request from my Instagram page. I wasn't sure if I should touch on this in every video as I go along, or if it should be a video on its own. It was ultimately decided that it should be its own video, so here we are. Now when I worked on this outfit, I used a large variety of different paints, sealants, anything in between. It was mostly a trial and error process, but I do have some tips on what you should use and what you shouldn't use through my own experience. First, I'll start with primers. For those of you who don't know, a primer is something that you should put down before you paint. This helps the paint stick better when you put on your final coat. The first one I would like to discuss is right here, Flex Seal. Flex Seal is something that I found at Walmart actually, before I knew that Plasti Dip existed. I don't recommend using Flex Seal as a primer because it tends to come out all kind of spindly and in gobs, and it's just a big huge mess. But when it comes to primers, I have just one word: Plasti Dip. Plasti Dip is probably the holy grail of all primers, from my own experience at least. I highly recommend checking out Kamui Cosplay's video on Plasti Dip and how to use it for cosplay and other like things. She does a very good job on explaining how to use it. I use Plasti Dip for the claws on both the hands and the feet of my Argonian, and as a base coat for the head and the tail. I will be going into more detail about those parts in another video. Now the next thing I'd like to discuss is paint. Believe it or not, the majority of my Argonian consists of spray paint. Doesn't need to be anything expensive, but this is what I used. The main base was a black color. That was the Plasti Dip, and that provided a better texture for the paint and helped it stick on and have a lot more color to it. The main color after that was this red color by Krylon. Then I added some of the browns and a few patches of orange where I felt it was appropriate. Again, this is all a big trial and error process. You have to play around with it to see what would work best for you and your creation. Another paint that I would recommend is puffy shirt paint. You might not think that this would make good paint, and I recommend it to some extent, but it is good for some texturing. I will be discussing that further in the video about Ryu's tail. The main reason why I would not recommend this puffy shirt paint is because it takes so long to dry. While I was working on this, I didn't have AC, and it was the middle of summer. It was well over 100 degrees, and this stuff just simply would not dry. It's supposed to dry 100% within 24 hours, but it was going on almost 3 days, and this stuff was still wet, and it was running, and it just messed up my entire tail. I was able to correct it to some extent. It worked, but not as well as I would have liked. So if you do want to use this for something like extra details, scales, I recommend doing it in a cooler room, and definitely give yourself enough time to let it dry. It does like to run, so it's not good on curved surfaces like I had my tail, but a flatter surface would be a lot better. After I had all my spray paint down to get a general color, I added more fine details with acrylics. Now I used acrylics because I haven't had any experience with oil-based paints yet, and I did not want to have them running all over the place and making a mess. Now the main colors of acrylics that I used consist of red, orange, and yellow. I picked these colors because Ryu is primarily red, and wanted colors that would help make that red stand out. This is also why I ended up choosing brown rather than black for a lot of the shading that I ended up putting in. I've had the question of why did you use spray paints and not just use acrylics on the whole thing? Well, let me put it this way. Would you rather use something this size to paint a head that is this big, or would you rather use a can that sprays the paint in order to cover a larger area? That was my deciding factor as to why I used spray paint as opposed to acrylics on the entire head. This provided me with a lot more room to get the colors that I wanted in a shorter amount of time and for a cheaper price. Now some of the very fine details that you might see on the head, the teeth, eyes, and other little parts on Ryu, those were all done with an airbrush. I have my airbrush here. I got this for Christmas about a year ago. This is a dual action airbrush, meaning that you can control the flow of air and it's not just one straight density of air. I am by no means a professional with an airbrush. This is my first time ever using one, so I don't have much advice on that other than just experiment and see what you can come up with. When it comes to sealants, I ended up using sprayable Mod Podge. This particular kind is the matte. You can get glossy as well. I used matte because I didn't want Ryu to look glossy, and I felt matte would give him a more realistic texture. This orange stuff in particular was glossy, but I bought that just to kind of experiment and see what would happen. Now, another question I had through my Instagram page was my makeup. Now, you might not think that I would need much because I'm inside of the outfit, but as you can see in this photo, my face is all blacked out. I actually used black lipstick to cover my entire face. I've since misplaced that since my last convention, but I do recommend this cream makeup. It works in a very similar fashion. Instead of an oily lipstick, this is a cream that's meant to go on faces. I blacked out my face in this outfit because it gave the illusion that this was an actual creature and that there was not somebody inside puppeteering the creature. It wasn't a necessity, and I only did this for one day of the convention, but I really thought that it helped bring out the character. The last thing I would like to discuss is Ryu's tongue. This tongue came from Dream Vision Creations. As some of you may have noticed, there are little yellow bits on the tongue. Ryu's tongue initially did not have these bumps on it. I took a 2-part silicone, mixed it together, and sculpted these on top. Now, I have no idea what Argonian tongues look like. I would imagine that they might look something like this. This, I felt, gave it a little bit more texture and a little bit more character to Ryu. This tongue went through a lot of trial and error. At first, we tried airbrushing it, and I liked the result. I ended up putting my sealant on there, and all of the paint chipped and came off. I was later told that I need to use silicone on top of silicone in order to make the color stick. I did not have the funds at the time to go buy a tiny thing of silicone paint to use on such a small thing. I ended up just kind of improvising, and I used acrylics for it. Paint ended up chipping off, and now it is the way it is. It's not that big of a deal, but now I know for next time that I'll have to use silicone paint. One last thing that I would like to add is a little bit about adhesives. What I primarily used for this project is E6000. I use this to keep Ryu's teeth in his mouth, to put my claws onto the gloves, and to even put some of the scales onto the gloves and other pieces. My only complaint with this is that it takes a little bit to dry. It does not take nearly as long as the puffy shirt paint. Give it 20 minutes or so and it will probably set. Another 24 hours and it will fully cure. E6000 is basically... Actually, I don't know what this is. Mom! Hi. Is E6000 a silicone? It may cause skin irritation. It just says industrial strength adhesive. Love you. Okay, bye. E6000 is an industrial strength adhesive. I also use this to keep a lot of that stuff on Ryu's staff. What I do recommend, because E6000 takes a little bit longer to set, take some hot glue, use that to keep whatever you'd like into place, then use E6000 to adhere the rest of it. Again, it's a lot of experimenting to see what's going to work for you and how to make it work, but in the end, it will all work out. That's all for now. I thank you again for all of your support, and I can't wait to share the next video with you.